What's up, guys? Let's read the Bible together. The whole thing. I have been reading through the Bible canonically, so like in the order that it's published, with my house church, and we are using this Bible study workbook to help us along the way. It's called the Bible Study by the Brand Sunday. I'll put a link in the description in case you want to buy one too. It was about $40 to get a 2-pack. One is the Old Testament, one is the New Testament, and honestly, worth it. If you think about it, you're getting 2 workbooks, so they're $20 each. This is not a paid promotion. I just really like this workbook. It's very much so like what you put into it is what you get out of it. And if you're reading the Bible for the first time ever, or if you're new to reading the Bible, this explains so much and walks you through it really well. I'm just so impressed. And if you've read the Bible before, maybe you're like ultimate Bible college, Bible scholar, champion, you will still get stuff out of this if you take some time with the questions. And I mean, anytime you read through the Bible, you're gonna get stuff out of that. So that's cool. So yeah, let's just get started. By the way, this Bible study workbook was designed to take you through the entire Bible in a year. We're probably not gonna go that fast, but if you wanted to read it that fast, you totally could. You'll just surpass these videos. I'm thinking the way that we're gonna do these Bible study videos is we're just gonna do a couple of chapters at a time, and we'll do a little summary, kind of like Bible Project, which is a great channel, by the way. Also, if you're new to reading the Bible, recommend those. And then we'll just dig into the stuff that I think is the most interesting. I take a lot of notes in my Bible. I know some people don't like writing in their Bibles because it makes them feel like kind of like it violates the sacredness. But honestly, this is just paper, and I am an English teacher, so I write notes in books. Sorry. They also give you tons of blank space inside the workbooks so that you can write notes and draw pictures. Like I'm doing a little illustration of my own in each of the books of the Bible just for my own fun. Like this is the one I did for Genesis. Like I drew a little tree with a fruit on it. So cute. But yeah, so let's get started and do some Genesis together. Okay. So Genesis means beginning, right? And the intro to our workbook tells us that the author of Genesis and the whole Torah, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, were written by Moses, as in the same Moses that part of the Red Sea, Moses from the Prince of Egypt, that guy. The date, we know that Genesis was written sometime between the Exodus out of Egypt and 1446 BC. And the conquest into the Promised Land in 1406 BC. So other parts of the Bible, have indicated when this was written, which is pretty cool. Something that really blew my mind, that I had never thought about, and I've read Genesis all the way through a couple of times in my life, but I had never thought about it like this before. Genesis was written to the Israelites when they were just rescued out of Egypt. So if Moses was writing it to the Israelites, that means it was specifically written for people who were coming out of a very pagan culture. Like they were living with the Egyptians. Like the Israelites were enslaved to the Egyptians for hundreds of years and generations. And like that's the group of people that Genesis was written for. And so with that context, like God is explaining himself to a group of people who've been living in Egypt this whole time. That is pretty stinking cool. I forget if it's actually written in this workbook or not, or if I just heard it somewhere else, but like when you know anything about Egyptian mythology, they have, or really any mythology, they have gods for like certain like parts of nature. And the way that this first chapter is set up, where it describes the days of creation, is God saying, I created and have dominion over all the things that you've been giving credit to the Egyptian gods. So it starts out, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and void, or formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So from the very beginning, the very first thing that God wants his people to know, that in the beginning it was him. Not Ra, not Isis, not any Egyptian god. It was himself. And he made heaven and earth. Like, I just imagine him, like, taking their worldview and, like, then, you know, looking at how they believe the world was, and then just, like, uncapping a Sharpie and then just, like, crossing out. Like, no, you're wrong. Now let me show you what's right. I was at the beginning. That's pretty cool. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. God saw that light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. And he called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. This is really interesting because the days are starting to be counted before there's a sun and a moon. So how are we keeping track of time? It's this beautiful poetic metaphor, poem, artistic way that God's expressing himself to his people. I know there's all like, are you an older creationist or are you a younger creationist? What about evolution? What about age of the earth? When I read this, I think it doesn't matter how long it takes in space-time. What matters is how he did it. No help. Just God. And this is what he knew was important for the Israelites to know. It makes me think, like, if I asked my parents how they got together, I wouldn't expect them to say, well, I walked underneath this tree on this day at this time, and then your dad was walking over from this building, this geographic location, and had on this color shirt and this brand of shoes, and at this precise geographic location at this time, that's when we met. Like, that's not important to me. What I care about is the feelings that they have for each other. What made them catch each other's eye? Like, what were the things that they said to each other? And this is God introducing himself to his people. I've heard people say, it's clearly history, or it's clearly metaphor, or it's clearly literal. Like, and I have my own personal opinion about what I think the age of the earth is. But honestly, like, guys, when I'm reading this, I can't ignore the literature. Like, the literary beauty of God introducing himself. And being like, this is a story of how I made you. This is how I get credit for all the beautiful, the light, the darkness, the grass and the trees and the animals. And also, like, there's this imagery of, like, sculpting, right? I have a note that says God speaks, God creates, God separates, and God names. So it's not just that he speaks and things appear. He does that, first of all. He speaks and things appear, and then he separates the darkness from the light. And then he gives them names, day and night. And then God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate the water from water. And God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. And he called the vault sky. There was evening, and there was morning, the second day. He doesn't just go, sky, water. He like creates water and then like separates them. Is this like the creation of gravity, I wonder? Either way, it's like I just picture like hands like molding clay. How cool is that? I don't know. If you were expecting like like really good like Bible scholar like insight from this Bible study, maybe you should watch Mike Winger instead of me, or watch us both. But man, Genesis just makes me sit and wonder. Like, wow, that's how he did it. And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let dry ground appear. And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and gathered the waters he called seas, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed according to their various kinds. And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with the seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning the third day. And God said, let there be lights in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years. So now we finally get, like, the sun. And I think this is really cool because, like, we know what the universe is shaped like, right? With the sun in the middle and the earth around it. But this is explaining how the earth works and, like, its purpose, right? The earth isn't just a speck around a star. The sun and the earth are in these specific places so that the earth can tell the time and mark sacred times. And we can keep track of time. That's cool. Like, all of these things being created for, like, humanity. The universe, like, being shaped the way it is, and, like, for the sake of humans, and, like, how their way of life is going to be. I have a note that says, God is intentional. The lights that guide us also mark time. And another note that I have is that it was tov. I learned this Hebrew word a while ago when I was reading a book. The word in Hebrew for good, that's the word when it says God said that it was good, is tov. The word was tov, which means more than, like, our word for good. Like, when we say good, good could just mean, like, it was a good day, it was good stuff. Like, especially in American English, good just means, like, fine. Good just means, like, all right, like, okay. Like, not great, just good. Just, like, not terrible. Tov was not just the absence of something bad. Tov was, like, peace. Like, when they said something was tov, it means it was at peace, excellent, perfect. Everything came together. Like, you were having a tov day. It was like, those are the ones you want to have. And so God calling all these things good, and just like, oh, this is okay, that's okay, that's good, that's good. And it's like, and this is just right, and this is just right. And which, spoiler alert, when God saw all that he makes, it's going to be very good, very tov, which is even a bigger deal. And let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light on earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. I love the poetry of it. There's this, like, parallelism where each little verse, almost like a song, matches. And then this happens, and this happens. And there's morning, and there's evening. And it's the fourth day. And God said it was good. Like, that repetition is so lovely. And so, like, you can hear the poetry even if you're not hearing it in Hebrew, which I'm sure is even more beautiful. And this is also something that people memorized. Like, in a time where not everyone could read, like, it would be a thing where little Jewish boys would memorize the Torah, which just blows my mind. So this would be committed to memory, and that repetition would help you memorize it. It makes me think of, like, all the songs I know, all the Disney songs that are just, like, tattooed in my brain. Like, instead of having Disney songs, it was this. And the reason you remembered it was because it had this beautiful repetition in it. And God said, let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky. So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living thing with which the water teems and that moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, and he said, be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 5th day. I also just remembered the way they count days in, I guess, Bible times, or like in at least the Jewish people at this time, was like that the next day starts in the evening. So we measure days from kind of like sunrise to sundown, or like midnight to the next midnight. They would consider the day starting in the evening. So when the sun went down, like for us, Friday night was their like beginning of Saturday. Sun goes down on Friday night. They considered that the beginning of Saturday. Kind of interesting. So we even see that here. And there was evening and there was morning, the 5th day. And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image and in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. It will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw that all that he had made, and it was very good. There was evening and there was morning, the 6th day. Okay, let's talk about the image of God. That was one of the questions that is in the workbook. Moses states that man was made in God's image. What do you think that means? I think it gives a great amount of value to every human life. But there is no, these are God's favorites and these are just, riffraff. When you see every single human being as an image bearer of God, like there's this divine spark in every human, you're gonna see like your fellow person in a different light. I also have the note that I wrote here says, we have a creative soul. God imagines and creates. Humans can, in a lesser way, create. If God is this creative force, this being that just creates and calls them good, then there is a bit of that in us that we can have free will and create as well. Obviously not create out of thin air like God can, but like we can create ideas and we can shape the earth and make things in ways that the animals don't, and the ways that the animals can never do, which is crazy. What a great and terrifying burden to be put on your shoulders, is that like you are made in the image of God. What you gonna do with that? That's the end of chapter 1. I thought we were just gonna kind of summarize it, but it kind of helps to read the whole thing. What a powerful first chapter, you guys. I just love the beautiful poetry. I love, like, thinking about this as like the way that God introduces himself to like his people. We'll just read the beginning of chapter 2 is really kind of the last part of this section. It says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the 7th day, God had finished the work that he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done." We know that God probably doesn't actually physically need to rest, but that this is like he's giving us an example of what we should do. And also, like, when you create, you step back and you look at what you've done and just admire it. And I think that's what God's doing here. He's just stepping back, it's done, and he's looking at it and going, well, that's very good. The next part of Genesis kind of like is really interesting, because we have like this poem about the days of creation, and then there's Adam and Eve. And we know that Adam and Eve are created in the poem part, the chapter 1. Then there's like a chapter 2 version of Adam and Eve, which I think is just really interesting. And almost kind of, one is like a cosmic perspective of God creating all the things. And then there's like this personal perspective of like, now let's zoom in and see what life was like for that first dude that God made. So it's kind of like not entirely chronological, because we have God making all the things, and human beings are included in that. And then it kind of goes like, here's those 7 days where all the things are made, and then let's look in at what one of those creative things does. And we have the first man. Let's read that next time. All right, you guys, I love you. I want to encourage you guys to read your Bible, and if you haven't yet decided to follow Jesus, I highly recommend it. Don't get your life together before you follow Jesus. Follow Jesus and he'll help you get your life together. Have a wonderful rest of your night. I love you. Have a good night. Bye.